This is the Nun spoiler movie review. Live on Screen Fiend. Not live, actually. But let's get into it. Let's talk about this and get this situation put in its proper perspective. This is ridiculous, y'all. If you hadn't seen the movie by now, congratulations. The Nun is a complete failure, in my opinion, on what should have been an epic film. They had the landscape, they had the character, they had everything except a story that makes sense and a script that was written by a 5-year-old kid. It was obviously clear they didn't know how they were going to make this film. It's like they went back and watched every horror movie ever made and chose some scenes from some of the dumbest horror movies we probably have seen that weren't really horror movies. So, like, they took the part from Hellboy with breaking the seal to release Hellboy. Then they mix it in with Demon Knight. When they start talking about the blood of Christ and the relic, they have a relic that contains the last remaining blood of Christ. And as soon as it was introduced, I said, oh, Demon Knight. Yeah. And then the ending is Demon Knight. I was like, this is the worst I've ever seen. This is the absolute worst I have ever seen. It, the foreshadowing, the the father, the priest, none of this is believable. It is like the biggest joke I've ever seen in cinema history. Now, the key to make it a movie is to not make the scenes look like a movie. It's supposed to look natural. It looks as if people are following the script that says they're supposed to be in this position at this time. And we have to stand here because this is what the scene requires. Where it doesn't make sense for the character to even be standing in this spot whatsoever. So that's what we mean by just natural. It should happen naturally. And like the things that are happening, they should happen around a person naturally. You only see like one of these scenes in the film that looked like it happened naturally, and the rest of it was just ridiculous, just utterly ridiculous. From the beginning, the writing was very clear that they needed somebody for comic relief, and they grabbed this one guy who ends up finding the body. Now, what is unapparent to me was, I guess, the seal was broken and they went in there by the bombs of war, whatever cracked the seal, and Valak was able to get out. So these two nuns try to go in as the last stands to go in there in the room and try to stop what's happening with Valak or whatever. But he needs a vessel to get out. He can't get out of the castle unless he takes over the soul of one of the nuns or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what about the nun he just dragged into the building? He couldn't take possession of her soul? So I don't get it. Like, it just didn't make any sense. So I'm like, well, what was wrong with her soul? She was too old? And then the other lady, she killed herself, hung herself as a sacrifice so that he wouldn't take her soul. It was a very different type of just weirdness. I mean, the introduction of the film looked like it was going to be promising, but besides creepy imagery, that was the seemed to be the only way they were going to scare people in this film. And people had a lot of build up to be scared, and they really weren't. It became like a slasher film halfway into it. You're not even terrified. You're just watching the movie. It's like an action movie almost. You got a guy with a gun who's like the comic relief, a guy named Frenchie, who's from Romania or French Canadian, whatever, and he's just for comic relief. At least he knew what his character was. I'm just here to alleviate the situation. He's running around there with a shotgun, accomplishing things. Now, this whole thing's supposed to be supernatural, and everybody's got crosses and holy water and all this stuff, but things seem to be resolved with a shotgun. So even Valak grabs a shotgun. Like, what do the supernatural ghosts need with the shotgun? Like what does he need to get accomplished with a shotgun? I'm like, oh my god, this movie is so ridiculous. Then the guy gets buried alive. The father, like, this had to be the dumbest script in history. The Vatican has some mysteries about what's going on. They send a priest and somebody who wasn't even converted into a nun yet. She hadn't even taken her vows. But they feel that this is the task for her. Wow, what foreshadowing is this? So they send this inept father over here who's supposed to investigate. They find a creepy person who don't even show her face, kept her face covered the whole time as she's talking to them. They suspect nothing. You're coming to do an investigation to see if there's something wrong, and then you got somebody who's running the head nurse, head nun that's running everything, got her face covered and just talking to you. I'm like, and you believed it? I mean, like they're just going along for the ride. So yeah, it was that kind of film. And then not only was it that kind of film, it became quietly obvious after he was buried, the father, that once you knew what was gonna come and happen from this film. When they were ringing the bell, she's down there playing with the bell. Yeah, so if you're trapped inside of a coffin, all you gotta do is pull the string in case you get buried alive. People can come dig you up. Just pull the string. The people come over here and dig you out the box. So naturally, I said, "Oh yeah, somebody's going in the box." You know it. It's the foreshadowing. Then next thing you know, he's in the box. He's pulling the strings. She sees a vision where she knows exactly where he is. Then miraculously, there's a shovel right next to him, so that they could dig up the grave. He's already in a box that's covered in dirt already. How he got there, no one knows. So now he gets out of the box and is like, there's definitely something supernatural going on here. And then he looks at the thing. He looks at the grave, and there's books and stuff, and he's like, maybe these books are the key. How do you jump? That's a heck of a leap. Maybe these books are the key. You think? Wow, what would give you that inclination? And then he acts as if they just like some water just spilled. You were buried alive by just falling backwards. dreaming that you had seen something that wasn't there, and a snake coming out of a kid's mouth, you fall into a box and you're immediately covered in a grave. You get rescued and get dug out, and your first thought was, I think there's something supernatural going on. Something weird. Some real evils were at work here. Maybe these books are the key. And you go there and stay there and you start reading books. I said, what kind of film is this? This makes no sense. And then the next day they see more blood at the blood stain. It's more now. Look, it's even more blood. Another piece of the puzzle. I mean, really, it is. Oh my God, it is that bad. Then he sends her in there like it's nothing wrong. Go in there and see, talk to the other nurses and see if they know what's going on. I'm like, you just got all the answers you need when you were buried alive. I ain't going back in there. We leave. The investigation is over. We got everything we needed to know. Send the troops. I'm coming back with a Armada. So, one thing for sure, two things for certain. This film failed by using the same type of imagery they've shown in the early Conjuring films. We've already seen these things in the Conjuring 1 and 2, the Annabelles. We've seen this. So, given the fact that we've seen these imageries, we've seen the creepy shadow move around till it gets to the painting or the mirror or what have you, we've seen that. So the fact that we've seen all this transpire already, why are we seeing it again? We should have been allowed at the time to adjust or say, hey, this isn't right. Let's do this because this thing is not, being properly depicted. Like, we've shown this already. Maybe we should show something different. And it would have had a different effect. There was some creepy imagery, but it just ends up turning out to do nothing. It's just scare scenes. So, and then it's like, okay, if this is a hallucination, like, how is this person able to do what they're doing? Like, is this a real boy? Is it like, where's this boy coming from? Where's these snakes coming from? Like, is that a hallucination? Where's this little boy's body keeps popping up out of? So it's like you don't know what's happening. Is it a hallucination or what it is that he's doing? And then one of the snakes bites the father in the eye. He ends up losing his eye because of it. It was just a very terrible type situation. So the French guy was able to break the valve and put the blood of Christ, the relic, onto the girl who was possessed. And the spirit comes out of her. The nun spirit, he jumps out of her body. Then the nun character grabs him by the throat and chokes him and breathes on her and knocks her into the water to get the blood off her. Terrible. Then she ends up putting the rest of the blood in her mouth, spitting it in the face of the nun, Demon Knight. And it it was terrible. Very terrible the way they did this. And I sat there and I said, "Oh wow!" Not only did they take the last remaining blood of Christ from the Demon Knight, they actually take the ending of Demon Knight. I'm done. I am done with this franchise. I hope this is the end completely. We need no more Conjurings. We need no. They're done. It was a nice run. The Insidious ones were a lot better than this. So, Conjuring 1 and 2, great. Everything else after that has been crap. The Annabelles, they've turned out to be just a bunch of crap. And now you got, oh, I would say Annabelle Creation was more creepier. The first Annabelle was kind of stupid. But whatever. All of this should be done. Scrap it all. Start with a whole new character, new story, come with new visions, new creative ways, because it's like they've run out of ideas and they just kept milking the same thing over and over. And now whenever people walking out not terrified or scared or shook up, you didn't do your job. This film was like, you didn't do your job. So apparently when he was choking out the guy, he actually put a snake in his mouth, and now the snake goes in his mouth. So now he's possessed. He's got an inverted cross on the back of his neck, upside down cross on the back of his neck, which I guess meant he was possessed. Which they just did that just to tie the movie along, to say, oh, this is how he got there, and she was able to see visions of Valak and all these things as he was still around, terrorizing people, and was still very much around. All I can tell you is I was super bored watching this movie, and just probably much as you bored listening to how terrible this movie was. So if you made it to this part of the movie or the video, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and thanks for supporting Screen Fiend. And I'm out.